When we think of Prince Albert, we think of a kept man, a consort to Victoria, our great queen, or perhaps a rather intimate piercing. Yet, incredibly, without this marvellously mustachioed German, Queen Victoria, and indeed Victorian Britain as a whole, would have never have achieved such a legendary status in our history. This is the astonishing story of Prince Albert and his incredible legacy, Albertopolis. If a homeschooled 18-year-old with no discernible qualifications whatsoever came to see you and said they were applying for one of the top executive jobs in the country, you'd probably politely suggest that they finish the photocopying and then consult a psychiatrist. But incredibly, those were Queen Victoria's qualifications when she came to the throne.
Although it would have been unfair to call Queen Vic Queen Thick, in those days girls were generally taught about girly things like drawing and dancing. And as such, Victoria wasn't ready to be queen of anything except the dance floor.
This was a problem. The early 1800s was still a time when being the queen meant having quite a lot of power, and Victoria was not afraid to use it. For example, when a new, more modern prime minister came in and replaced her favourite fuddy-duddy old one, she wasn't having any of it and got the new one kicked out.
This was making everyone a bit nervous about the new queen. All over Europe, people were kicking out or bumping off their royal families, and if Victoria carried on like this, it was thought that the Brits might be the next country to get rid of their kings and queens.
But luckily, help was on hand in the form of hunky new German husband, Prince Francis Albert Charles Augustus Emmanuel of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, or plain old Prince Albert to you and me. Now, aside from being Victoria's cousin, kinky, Albert was a genuinely clever man who'd been to a fantastic university in Germany. He quickly became Victoria's most trusted advisor before subtly starting to shove her to one side and taking complete control for himself.
But apart from Queen Vic, no one really liked Albert at first. It was all the usual Johnny Foreigner stuff, a bit like when Sven took over the England team. Most of the country was offended that no Brit was good enough to do the job.
But like Sven, Albert had two undeniable skills which soon won people over: organisation and bonking.
Albert literally bonked for Britain, providing the Queen with 9 children and making sure that Victoria was more than satisfied in the bedroom.
And despite the fact that he and Victoria were at it like a pair of very posh rabbits, Albert still had time to organise the Great Exhibition right here in Hyde Park, where countries from all over the world got together to celebrate the most modern and most exciting bits of their nation.
Unsurprisingly, for an event where all the coolest stuff in the world was collected under one stunning roof, people couldn't get enough of it. 6 million people came to have a butcher's, a third of the whole country, and it made a ton of cash.
But the question was then, what should they do with all the dosh?
Albert pushed to create a complex of public buildings in Kensington to continue the legacy of the Great Exhibition. It became known as Albertopolis, the greatest cultural centre the world had ever seen.
Thanks to Albert, this one site now houses the V&A, the world's largest museum of decorative arts and design, the Royal Albert Hall, the home of the Proms, and the only place to ever have the Beatles and the Stones on the same bill. Imperial College, one of the top 5 universities on the planet for science, medicine and technology. The Royal College of Art, the Royal College of Music, the Royal Geographical Society, and until recently, the Royal College of Organists. Not bad for a guy that most of the country didn't even think was worthy of the Queen.
Sadly, Albert didn't see any of these projects come to fruition because he died in 1862 before a single one had been finished.
Which was a shame, really, because Queen Victoria never got over the death of her husband, retreating completely from public life, famously wearing black all the time, sleeping next to a picture of Albert's corpse every night, and generally making everyone and herself completely miserable until she died almost 40 years later. So it's looking like Albertopolis is going to be put on the list of World Heritage Sites. meaning this invaluable piece of central London is going to be right up there alongside the pyramids and the Great Wall of China. So, whilst it's not true that Albert had the piercing down there that bears his name, the least you can say about him is that he did have a massive legacy.